morning. It is June 1st and a Monday. I love it when the first of the month and it starts on a Monday. It just feels so clean and organized that way. Anywho, this is like the 21st, 22nd Flow Chaser Mondays, and I'm presenting a theory on accessing the flow state. So there's a plan for this presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit, so little, about who I am. And then before I set up and talk about how we're going to chase flow this week, I'm also going to talk about burnout and how it's related to chasing flow. All right, so a little bit about this presentation. I said it was like the 22nd Flow Chaser Monday. This is a presentation that I'm doing every Monday in 2026 at 6 a.m. in the morning. This is me practicing that repetitive, consistent practice, right? There's no selling, I have nothing to sell you, and this is about a 30-minute lecture. And the last few weeks, I have been like right on 30 minutes. When I first started, it was like 45, 15 minutes. No, 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 none of that. We're getting concise here. So a little bit about who I am. In my day-to-day life, I'm a brand and web designer for Highly Anticipated. I like to do creative things. I'm also somebody who has a lot of personal and professional goals. You see that gorgeous cable knit sweater? I knit that with my own hands. I've been working for myself in the creative business for over 10 years. And I am somebody who's just highly sensitive. Like when I feel feelings, I feel big feelings. And it takes a lot to manage those big feelings. So I have like really inconsistent energy patterns, which is probably why a challenge like do a 6 a.m. presentation on flow every Monday in 2026 was so um, enticing to me as like ooh, that would be challenging, but I would get better at that presentation. This is exactly what's happening. So that's kind of like the setup of like why I am interested in flow. And then I also have to talk about burnout because it's something that was the catalyst for me chasing flow, was just being in a really good burnout. And so here's some patterns that I'm seeing with burnout. It starts with a high capacity person, and I'm giving myself a pat on the back here, but it's because you are capable of doing something, either being productive, creating, making somebody feel a certain way. It starts with high capacity. And then we are praised or given compensation for the thing that we do. So we see, oh, if I'm really good at this, if they like it, then I will get praise or get access to the resources that I need. This can lead to burnout if what you're being praised for is something that you do or were taught to do, but you're not intellectually or creatively engaged with it, and you are positioned to do that thing over and over again because maybe that's the job or those are the expectations that are set around you, and it leads to burnout. And that is because there is a disconnect between the energy and the mental strength, um, the passion that you have for this and the actual task. And I believe that that is harmful to a person on the soul level, to keep engaging in tasks for other people's benefits or for other access to resources without investigating what is the thing that we are actually passionate about and actually like curious and driven for. And because that riff is so painful for people, to be disconnected from their interests and their desires, that leads to going unconscious. Like if something hurts, you don't focus on it, thinking that you'll be able to churn more of the things that you've been doing without actually having to be deeply connected to the work. Okay, that was kind of a bummer. Now we're going to go into chasing flow. But we have to talk about how burnout is that disconnect between what you are really interested and passionate about, but you get your time and your energy taken away from you in support of the thing that you think you need to do to get resources, and how painful that is for a person and how damaged that is. And so we get into this burnout, but isn't there a different way to exist, to create professionally? How do you sync together what you are passionate and interested in, and also get access to the resources that you need, desire, deserve? I believe that that is the method of chasing flow. Few parts. I will get us all in the same place and talk about what is flow. I know that there's a lot of information and podcasts and articles on how you can be so much more productive if you tap into this thing called flow. But I'm going to give you a conceptual model of how I see it. And it actually is a helpful guide on how to like get into the state of flow once you kind of break down like what is the mechanisms of flow. I'm going to talk about your brain on flow, like why does it feel so freaking good? How to chase flow. I need to insert that in here, but there is this wonderful formula by Bashar that I will share with you. And then how creativity and adaptability play into the flow cycle, and how that comes back to radical self-acceptance and alignment, and then ultimately using alignment as a flow trigger. Okay, so most of us think of flow as this really fun state that our brains kind of can drop into, whether it's, multiple times a day, situationally when there's like something really great going on, or something that you try to get into with your work to have this like hyper focus or highly creative dynamic condition. But what is actually happening? What does it feel like when you are dropping into flow? I believe that this conceptual model is like the best way to think about flow. So everybody has this comfort zone, and it is expanding and contracting based on how well you've slept, your water, like how you're feeling that day. We all have this like comfort zone. And that extends all the way out until we get into this dysregulation zone, which is just when your body has needs, or when your energetic capacity for the thing that's going on wanes, like the excitement wanes. Dysregulation is also a huge continuum based off of like how the person is doing, like where's their mental health at. Somebody with like a really short fuse is somebody who hits the dysregulation zone. Okay. And it's important to note that the dysregulation zone is not good or bad. It is simply when your body's or your mind's energy goes into calming regulation strategies, but it pulls you out of what I'm going to talk about next, which is where does flow exist. All right. Going back to the comfort zone, in the inside of the comfort zone is complete assurity that you know exactly what's going to happen. You are safe. There's no danger present. You are in the nucleus of your comfort zone. And now, when we start to expand towards the outer edges of our comfort zone, what we might be feeling or asking in our head are questions like, I don't know what's going to happen, but. And then as you move towards the end of your comfort zone, the probability that you know the answer or the outcome that will happen from that mental interest that you're showing is like how far away from your comfort zone. And this is where creativity happens. So if you're working on something, creating something that doesn't exist, doing something that has never been done before, which is what people say is when they are able to access the flow state, you have to leave the nucleus of your comfort zone in order to ask questions and to be curious and to manage the circumstances that are happening around you. And because that is towards the outer comfort zone, your brain responds in order to meet the demand of the difficulty, the complexity, the interest of the task. And then we have complete absorption and focus. And all of, time gets a little melty when you're working on this in a flow state and you're just completely absorbed until something happens. You get interrupted, right? And then the flow state is gone. Why does this feel so good? Your brain's response to the triggers, the external triggers of what's going on, your own creativity or interest or physicality is responding with this neurotransmitter surge. And it feels so good because these are what is happening in your brain naturally. These are street drugs that, if you were to take the street drug equivalent that your brain produces naturally in a flow state, then it would kill you. Like, you would never take the amount that your brain is just producing naturally, but it can handle it because this is an organic, natural state for humans to engage with the world this way. And so we're getting all of this cocktail of chemicals just because we're responding to the task, the environment that it's happening. And part of that is the prefrontal cortex, which usually it's like the executive functioning center, right? It predicts time, it strategizes, it does all these things, right? The inner critic that really runs in the prefrontal cortex, especially if you're an ADHD girly like me, it quiets down because of this neurotransmitter cocktail. So it feels really good. How do we get more of it? Spoken like a true addict. But there's also a lot of research how the flow state is neuroprotective. Acting on your passions is neuroprotective. We're doing all these top shelf street drugs, just making them up in our own brain. And how do we actually get into this flow state in a more predictable way? I have recommendations. The best personal flow steps that I have found comes from this Channeled Intelligence by Daryl Anka, and it's through Bashar. And I have all 5 steps here, but you should definitely consider going and watching the YouTube videos about it because it's beautiful. It's just what he says. First of all, act on passion, whatever your interest is. That is how the formula and accessing the flow state is just so different than chasing a goal, completing a task, doing the thing. It asks you to be engaged with it based off of passion, your interest, the things that excite you. And number 2, act as far as until the excitement wanes. When you hit that dysregulation zone, whatever, it can just feel like the excitement waning, then that is the end of the flow. Number 3, act on passion without assumption of outcome. When you're working on a creative project, you are opening yourself up to multiple outcomes, multiple possibilities. And so, what Bashar is saying here, number 3, act on passion without assumption of outcome, is let things be, ebb and flow and create. Like, when you're creating something at first, it can feel like a mess. Don't feel like it's going to turn out a mess. It's just part of the flow. So let things happen to you when you are in it without assuming this is good or this is bad. This is just what's is. This is what's coming up for you today, for right now. 4, no matter what happens, stay in a positive state. When we start to get really judgmental about what is happening, then we might have brains that tend to think of the worst case scenario. Number 4 is saying that whatever happens, just say or think like, oh, this is a good thing because this is happening. Stay in that positive state. And you think, like, oh, I can't control it in this state. There is a sense of letting go of control in that flow state, having total acceptance of whatever is happening right now, to stay in a positive mindset of, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm reasonably assured it's going to be great. All right. And then five, because we don't all have these perfect, happy, driven minds, I definitely feel more connected to my fears sometimes than at others. Examine your beliefs and release fear. As you're going about this, if something does come up where it's like, I'm really nervous that like this isn't going to turn out well, or this isn't going to turn out on time, when you're in a flow state, those can have the possibility of really kicking you out of a flow state and getting you and having you dysregulated to where your energy is going to have to um, kind of rally around these fears that you have. But if you can examine your beliefs, like, oh, I just had that perfectionism thought. That is so interesting. Can I let this project that I'm working on not be perfect? So, really, like looking at your thoughts not as this judgment of whether this is good or bad or a belief, but really like have that, find maybe the more positive thought and like release the fear about something having to be a certain way. That seems to be the fabric of flow. How do you get into flow and how do you stay in flow? And so I love this formula from Bashar. As you are solving a problem, doing something, there's going to be new challenges. And those challenges can be accepted as a flow trigger, or it could pull you into dysregulation. When you practice this formula of accepting the things that happen without thinking things are good or bad, it can keep you in the flow state for longer. And the longer your body and your soul feel really good being in a flow state, maybe you're following Bashar's formula, you are really engaged with this, the more that you can create in that flow state and the more strategies that you have to keep it going and accepting the new challenges as not things that are going to throw you off of the flow state, but almost like fuel, like a new element has entered in the painting or the creativity or a new challenge has been thrown your way. Somebody who has trained the formula really takes those challenges and they almost fuel deeper into creativity and to flow, because those are really the things that build your creativity and adaptability. So the more that we strengthen that as a muscle and practice being in the flow state for longer, I believe we have access to more creativity. Fundamentally, I found the study of flow because I was tired of all of the productivity that was made for neurotypical people. And I needed a new way, maybe a little bit of a magical way, to figure out how my brain gets into these flow states. And for some reason, flow really asks you to be right in your mind, or to be challenged, or to be have the ability to focus long term. What that comes down to is this baseline level of like regulation that you have in your experience at the time. The cool thing about it is there's this level of acceptance and regulation that feels like radical self acceptance, and personal alignment. Because goals don't necessarily need alignment. Flow requires it. What about you is interested in this activity and this challenge? It won't take something that your friend is or your boss is or your spouse is and make it interesting to you if it's not inherently interesting for you. And so I believe the study of flow is different than pursuing a goal because it says that whoever you are, your own stew of talents, experiences, and challenges is worthy of acceptance and support. And some people might be like, wow, that's a big jump from, the flow state feels really good. This is how you get into it. But this is the individuality and the personalization of chasing flow that you don't get when you are just chasing goals. So, how do you expand your capacity for being in the flow state? It really starts with self regulation, having that anchor into the comfort zone, then knowing how your brain works and accepting it. And then not only accepting your own unique ideas and abilities, but accepting the challenges that come your way because you are in the field of this flow state as flow triggers to perpetuate your interest and your engagement into whatever it is that you're doing. Kind of a wild philosophy, a new way of it, but this chase and this goal of understanding the flow state for me, and really these internal drivers of accessing the flow state is the reason that I do this presentation every Monday. And I do it every Monday because we have the entire work week ahead of us. We probably have goals that we are working on. I want you to look at your goals and to manufacture these situations where you could access the flow state with the goals that you have. So if you need to find out why you are personally connected to it, why you are interested in, why this thing needs to be, so the mission and the vision, and you can start to engage with tasks and events in a new way. And when we engage from it from the flow and we learned how to get into flow with Bashar, it is the best formula. Trust me, I've studied Csikszentmihalyi and Stephen Kotler and all these thinkers on flow. Bashar's the formula is the best route to accessing flow from an internal engagement set of a viewpoint. So, oh my gosh, I think this is the fastest that I've done this presentation, 24 minutes. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back next week at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I hope you all have some really good flow sessions.